Today's webinar is going to focus on fixed price jobs and progress invoicing in Knowify. Thank you guys again for taking the time out to join us. We've been really excited about running our Pro webinar series with this session and our sessions last week as well. And be sure to tune in also tomorrow and Thursday and also in the coming weeks as we'll continue to run these webinars to cover various topics in Knowify to help make you a pro within your account. Also, just as a reminder, all these webinars are being recorded and we'll upload them to our YouTube channel afterwards, so you'll always be able to access them at a later date. So just to give a brief introduction, my name is Vincent and I work with the product team here at Knowify. I'm excited to continue working on this webinar series and have you guys join me so we can walk through some of the basics and some of the more advanced topics of Knowify. And thank you again for taking out the time to join me today. So today's session, like I said, we'll be covering mainly fixed price jobs, creating the proposals, and also some of the different options we offer for progress invoicing. So we'll start off by creating a proposal on a job in Knowify so you can see some of the different options we offer to customize how the document will look, how we can price out the job, and control what our customer or GC is going to see when we propose and send out a bid to a job. We will also move into change orders so that once that job is signed or made active, if we need to make any changes to the value of the contract, Knowify has a fully fledged change order system that we can also use to send out documents for approval and also be able to keep track of the additions or even if there's a discount and the subtractions to that original contract price. The idea is, you know, whenever we send out a bid, we are able to get the customer to sign. And if the bid is ever going to change the price one way or the other, we can also send out a change order for signature as well. So we have signed copies of everything as far as what the customer or GC is due to pay us. Once we have a proposal and a contract job with a change order, we're going to go through some of the different progress invoicing options that Knowify offers. We have a number of different methods that you're able to choose from when you're invoicing. So I'd just like to walk through each of them so we can find the one that works best for you, how each of them operate. I'll also walk through building a schedule of values invoice. So these are the two different invoicing choices you have when you're creating a standard fixed price job. This is not to be confused with the AIA invoice. We'll actually be having a separate webinar that covers that more specifically. And lastly, after we have an invoice, we'll walk through some of the different payment options and how we can customize the document to send a paid receipt to the customer or GC when they fully pay off an invoice. So this is what we'll primarily focus on. I may skip some of the parts of building the job just so we can focus on this area. But as always, if you have any questions on any of that, on any of this, or on any other topics that may not have been covered, you can always reach out to us, our support team. And also our last portion of today's session is going to be an open Q&A. So as I'm going through the webinar, you can feel free to use the Q&A button in your Zoom window to submit a question. And then we'll leave some time at the end to try to get through as many questions as possible. So, you know, feel free to leave questions as we're going through or at the end of the session. We're happy to go through and provide more information. All right, so we'll go ahead and get started here. Now I'm going to transition back into my Knowify account where you can see we'll start off on the main contract jobs page. This is in your contract jobs section, and it's essentially the beating heart of your Knowify account where we can see all of our jobs in one place. We can see jobs that are maybe just in the lead status right now that we're currently bidding on, keep track of jobs that are out for signature, and also keep tracks of jobs that are active and pending change orders. So I'm going to pop into my job for today here, which is currently just a lead. So we can start from the process that I've already built the job, enter the general information here, and I'm ready to start creating my proposal. Before we jump into the proposal section, I just want to note the two main sections of your jobs in Knowify are the plan and track section and the proposal, which eventually becomes your contract section. The plan and track is used as a way for you to keep track of your cost internally. So we start off on the job, we can enter in our budgeted cost there. And then as we go through the project, we can keep track of employees' hours, labor cost, our material purchases, our subcontractor costs, basically whatever the job is costing me. We then have the contract and the proposal section for the client-facing side. So whenever I'm going to create an invoice or send out a bid for signature or any change orders, that's dealing with the revenue side of the project. We can use one another to build the contract where we can actually have a very similar flow. So I can see how much I'm making and spending on the different aspects of the job. But these are two totally independent sections here so that we can keep track of our cost on the job. And it doesn't necessarily have to be exactly in line with how we're invoicing and collecting payment on the job. So in the jobs that you create here with your professional job costing style, I just want to show you how we can use your budgeted cost as a way to create the proposal. So you can see here, I won't spend too much time in this section, but the plan and track, at this point, I've estimated what I'm planning on the job costing me at this point. And I get this broken down with the total amount here, categorized by material, labor, and subcontractor cost. And you can see I'm able to do this by adding multiple job phases here. And then I can budget materials by entering in each material here and the quantity and the unit price of each, and Knowify calculates that budgeted material cost here. Also a useful tool because later we can actually flip this into a purchase order. I can do the same thing for labor, where I can choose an employee or a role of employees and budget the amount of hours I'm planning on them to work. And based on that budgeted hourly cost, Knowify will calculate the labor budget. So these are two tools that I can use to have Knowify help me calculate what my budget should be based on what I'm planning on putting in. I can also just put in a lump sum amount, whether it's coming in here and just typing in the number for materials, labor, and for subcontractors. So we can get as detailed or keep things as streamlined as we need to here so that we ultimately are able to estimate the cost of this project here. Now, main part I want to focus on with this is how we can actually take this project plan and we can import it into our proposal when we're starting to build it. And you'll see that that's what Knowify asks us here when we start at the create proposal section. I always have the option to disregard those phases so that this way I just build my contract from scratch. We can keep track of the job as far as the costing, however we set it up here, and I can come up with a completely different way that I want to be able to present it to my customer and be able to collect payment on it. But this is also a tool that Knowify offers where I can take each one of those job phases and the budgeted cost for each, and I can go ahead and now import that onto my contract and start building my proposal by using each of those phases and the budgeted cost that I estimated previously. So at this point, you have a lot of different options here as far as how you want to set this up and how you want to display this to the customer on your proposal document. So I can start off by just coming in here and, I have each of the phase names here as now my line items, and I can always just come in and enter in the price here. There's nothing stopping us from doing that, but you'll see that Knowify does bring in whatever my estimated cost was for materials and labor. So I have a way of streamlining this whole process by putting in what I'm planning on marking up the job here and applying this across the board, either to just the materials or to everything. And I can do the same thing with labor, obviously. So I can take one markup and apply it to all materials and a completely different markup and apply it to all labor. And Knowify automatically applies that to what we estimated our cost to be. So it's pricing out the job for us based on what we're planning on it costing. So by doing this, I can actually enter a 50% markup here. I can apply it down across all of my contract line items. And now at the top, I can see what my my value is going to be to the proposal for the contract against what I initially estimated the cost to be. So at least at this point, we have a good idea of if things go to plan and there aren't changes and I hit my budget exactly, this is the difference here is what I stand to make on this project. Now we can go into more detail here as well. We have the option here to enter breakdown or bill of materials. And what this will let me do is apply a markup to individual items here. And I can actually start entering these and building them from scratch, similar to what we do in the budget, but actually start entering it here. Or when I've estimated specific items and quantities, you'll see I have the option to import from plan. And I can actually just bring in that budgeted list here. And Knowify will automatically pull in each item, pull in the quantity of each that I budgeted, and the unit cost. We also apply the markup percentage so that you can get the difference between the cost and whatever the list price is for that item. And these are all editable fields. You know, I can come in here and change what I'm marking up each item. And I can mark up items by different amounts. So it gives you a little bit more flexibility on pricing the job out. Now, as far as what we're displaying to the customer, you have the option of showing or hiding a lot of this information here. But the markup percentage, whether it's for each item or as a whole, will never be displayed on that proposal document. So everything as far as I want to show prices here or I want to show the quantities, that's what you're choosing to either show or hide. So I can click this button here and this will toggle on and off, letting me show or hide the breakdown items altogether. So this would be an option if I want to calculate the price of this line item internally, but I don't want to actually show what my calculations were or the specific items. This would be an option so that I can set the line item price to what I've set up here with markups, and I can hide this breakdown on the document. Now we'll also have the option to enter details or comments. You can see I have some of these boxes filled in with some more notes. This will show up as information and just details, scope of work for each line item here. So I'm going to have a terms and conditions box at the bottom where I can actually create one boilerplate list of all my terminology and verbiage. But this will let me actually describe and provide more information about each individual line item here. And if you create a work order when you're building the budget, we actually import that over automatically. So this way I don't have to re-enter anything, or I can make slight adjustments if needed. Now I can always come in here and add additional line items. And just so you see how this would look, this is essentially what we would do if we weren't using our budget. We would come in here to add an item. I can then come in and either search my catalog for an existing service here, or I can enter a new line item. And I can put in the price manually, or I can, enter my breakdown the same way as we showed above. Now, as I'm scrolling down here, we have some options here as far as how I want this to look on the document. One of the options you have is to either show those line item subtotals or hide them and just show the total price. So that's basically these numbers up here. I'm able to see how much rough carpentry cost, for example, and how much being charged for taping. And this is something that I can either show or hide to the customer. If I didn't want to show these, it would just simply show the total price of the bid at the bottom. Now, I have the option to either show or hide them here. And just to give you an idea of how that would look, this will let me show any kind of relevant description here, as well as the quantities and each line item, and it'll just show the total price at the bottom of the bid instead of each individual line's price. And that's an option that you can toggle on and off for any job. The other option, and I'll be covering this in a little bit more detail, is the schedule of values invoice. You're able to toggle between our regular standard invoice and the schedule of values one. And the primary difference, besides just some of the formatting, with our standard, our schedule of values will show a list of all of the line items here. And even if we're not actually billing for it, it'll still show what was been previously billed and what is remaining to date. So we'll get to this in a little bit more detail later, but this is where you would go ahead and make that choice. Now you'll be able to toggle on and off for every job, but once you choose the invoicing style or the output style of your proposal, it locks it in for that project. So we don't have a way of creating two different invoice types within the same job. But up until the point you create the first invoice, you'll always be able to make this switch. Now, lastly, I have my terms and conditions box here, and I can go ahead and use this and copy in those terms from our company default section. That's located up in your admin section. So if you have standard terms that are showing up on all of your jobs, you can enter them there, and then we can easily just copy them in to this box here. This will then let me go ahead and make changes to this. So if this is all going to be pretty standard, but I may need to make some job specific changes here, I can always edit the text in this box, and at least I didn't have to copy and paste or manually enter it. Now to move forward here, I can either send this out for a digital e-signature, or I can just manually make it active. In both cases, once it's signed or we manually make active, it's going to switch the project to active for us. So we can then go ahead and start invoicing and tracking our cost. Now for the e-signature process, you can customize an email here, and we'll include a link that will let the customer view this document online and digitally approve it. So that would be one option here. And just want to give you an idea of what the customer would see on their side when we send this out. Additionally, Knowify is going to automatically update the status of the job once we send out for signature. So you can see that the job status has been updated to out for signature. We can see when it was emailed. We'll also show if and when the customer opens it, and we can set an expiration date on it as well. Now on the customer side, they'll get that email, and once they click a link, click that link, it takes them to an e-sign page like this, where they can come in and view that proposal. And also a good time to show you just our stock template of how our standard proposals look. We include general customer and job information here, and just to give you an idea of some of your different output options when you enter in description of services and choose to show those breakdown items. And remember, we have the option to show all this information with or without these individual prices here. So we're just focusing on what the total for the bid is. I have my terms and conditions that come in here, and then I'll have the signatures at the bottom. So this is something they can also download as a PDF document, but you'll see at the bottom of the page is where they have the option to accept and sign, to request a revision, or to decline the proposal. And whatever they choose here, Knowify is automatically going to send you an email notification and will automatically update the status of the job for you. For example, if they request revision, you get an email with the notes they entered, and we switch the job back to bidding for you so that you can make whatever changes before resending it. But in this case, we'll go ahead and sign this out and show that this is a great proposal. We're going to go ahead and move forward, and then I'll go ahead and submit my e-signature here. And a couple things Knowify will do once you sign the document. This will now expire, so nobody can go back into this link. And when I go back into Knowify, my job is going to automatically switch to active. So nothing else needs to be done in the Knowify section on my side. It's automatically updated. And also, we email you a notification letting you know that the customer has signed the document. So you get a signed copy of it into your email. And you'll be able to go ahead and save that, and also just, again, for the notification. Additionally, in your documents section where you can upload pictures and documents into all of your jobs, you'll have a signed copy of that document automatically uploaded by Knowify here. So this way, you won't have to go far. You'll always be able to generate another copy of this proposal if you need to reference it at a later date and don't want to dig through your emails. Last thing with the proposal, these are completely customizable by our support team. So, if you have any changes that you need made, any kind of additional information you want to add, or if you just have a sample of one that you're using and want to, see if we can customize it and get as close as we can, please don't hesitate to reach out to us at support@knowify.com. So now that my job is active, my contract section is active here, which opens up the ability for me to come in and create invoices. But before we get to that, if I scroll to the bottom here, I have the option to add a change order. Now, when I'm creating a change order, I have a lot of the same options here as when we were initially creating our proposal, where I can add a new line item and price it out. I can also put in details or any kind of notes that are relevant here, and it'll show up in the description. I can even use the breakdown of material tool as a way to just kind of further detail the work or whatever the changes. The difference is with each change order that you create, Knowify automatically creates a change order document. So just like with our proposal, we can actually send out this change order for a digital e-signature. And the change order document looks very similar, where it provides some of the customer and job information here. It details whatever the change is. It also shows the previous contract amount and what the revised amount is if this is signed. And we have the signature line here because, like I said, you can actually come in to click send for signature, and it produces that same email that we can customize and the same e-sign link that the customer or GC can come in here now and approve. Once they go ahead and sign, just very similar to the way we did with the proposal, it automatically switches that change order to active. So I don't need to do anything on my end. I can now invoice for this change order. So we'll click up here to invoice now. This is one of two places, three actually, that you'll be able to create invoices. You can do it right here from in the contract section, or for jobs that are still open and active, you will have the invoice now button here on your main contract jobs page. And this takes us into our Invoice Builder, where we can choose from one of 4 different methods for invoicing. And this is to toggle between percentages, dollar amounts, and either billing at the line item level or for the total contract. So method number 1, and this is classic Knowify here, you're able to enter a percentage against each of your line items on the contract. And I can come in here and I can take one percentage and apply it across the board, or I could put in different percentages as far as work completed for each of these line items. Knowify is going to remember this information here, so I'll be able to see the next time I create a bill what was previously invoiced. And I can also see that broken down here in percentage against each line item as well. So I'll never have to worry about double billing or having to backtrack to see what was billed previously. Whenever I create a new invoice, our progress invoicing features allow for this information to be readily available here on this page. And you'll see too, you're also customizing how the invoice would look. So under that more options section down here, you can choose to bring in more information from the contract so that when we do show each line item on the invoice, we can include as much additional information as you want to show. Method number 2, it's very similar, except instead of dealing with percentage of work complete, we're actually putting in a dollar amount. So if we're looking for something a little bit more precise, you have a specific number against each, I can come in here, enter in the dollar amount for each, and it'll work very similar to method 1, where we'll keep track of, the remaining value here, what was previously billed. It's just using dollar amounts instead of percentages. Now this changes a little bit for methods 3 and 4. Instead of going to each line item, methods 3 and 4 deal with putting a percentage or dollar amount against the entire project. So for this example, number 3, which deals with percentage, I can invoice in installments. And let's just say I'm going to bill 25% and bill 4 invoices in total. I can come in here, enter that 25%. And Knowify is automatically going to distribute and calculate what the invoice amount is going to be. And then we'll still work the same where we show the previously billed amount, and down here we'll show what was billed previously as 25. It'll also have 25% grade in this box, so I know that my next invoice cannot be lower than that because I've already marked 25% work complete. I can just come in here, enter 50, and that'll be my second installment, and so on. It also breaks down the change order separately down here because this wasn't part of the original contract. So I can even come in here and enter a dollar amount or a percentage and bill for my change order separately or together on this invoice. And the last invoice method is the same as this process. It's just using a dollar amount instead of a percentage. So this is also a great tool if you're entering a job in Knowify that you already started before you started a Knowify account, and you want to just bring it up to speed on exactly how much you've already billed. You can just enter that amount here in this box, and Knowify is going to apply this amount across all of your line items evenly and create that invoice for you. Same thing with the change order here down at the bottom. Now, I just want to mention that you do have this choice of changing invoice methods for each job. But once you create the first invoice with one of these methods, you're locked into that method for the remainder of that job. This is just so that we can continue to calculate the numbers accurately and not have any rounding issues. But like I said, you're able to have this choice for every project, but once you choose one, it locks it in for the rest of the job. All right, so what this does is it goes ahead and brings my line items onto the invoice here, where I can customize how I want them to look and how much detail I want to display here. I can group items together here. So if I actually just put in a percentage against the whole job, it automatically does this for me. So I can choose to either show the individual breakdown of what we're billing for each line item, or I can just hide that and show just the total group amount and total price. So this would be an option if you want to break out everything and show the additional details on the contract. And this might help also for keeping track of work complete for each of these. But when you're actually sending the invoice document to your customer, if you don't want them to see the whole breakdown and just one big total number, you can group items together here, and that's just another tool that you have with Knowify. Also, most of these columns here are editable, so I can always choose to bring in and show more information or less. I can change any of the descriptions here. This is completely up to you how you want this to look. You'll also have comment boxes here at the top and at the bottom as other places to provide additional information. And at the top right, you can enter your general information about the invoice, such as the invoice number, PO number, if applicable, an invoice date, and also payment terms. And we do send invoices to QuickBooks if you're using QuickBooks Online. So this would integrate and use the same information. That's why we do check QuickBooks to make sure we're not duplicating an already existing invoice number. And your terms and invoice date come into play as well, so that we can show you once an invoice is overdue or when it's still just an outstanding amount. And just a preview so you have an idea how our invoice document looks. This is our standard stock template invoice where it's general customer and job information. However you decide to show or hide or limit the information here on the invoice, this is as much detail as we want to show to the customer. We total everything up here for you. We can also customize and add some additional information here. So I can show the customer, how much of the contract is remaining after this bill. And once we start logging payments, we can keep track of that against the remaining invoice balance. And like I mentioned, we do integrate directly with QuickBooks. So unless you uncheck this box, Knowify is automatically going to send this over. Now, really quick, just want to pop back into another job and show you what the schedule of values invoice would look like. I'll have all the same options here as far as how I want to bill out the project. And the schedule of values invoice looks a little bit different. I'm able to come in here and see a table here of all of my line items, the total amount, and I can see exactly what I'm billing for on this period. But in the case of my masonry schedule of value, I'm not actually billing for it here. We still list it as part of the table. So the customer or GC is now able to come in here and see exactly what we billed for previously, what the total amount is, the percentage complete, and what the balance is to finish any of these. So it's calculating the same information here, but gives it a different look. And this is definitely more for cases where we want to list all of our line items on every invoice. We just want to be able to separate what's being charged now and what was previously billed. So it's more along the lines of work completed than anything else. And there's a little bit less as far as customizing here, since we're just listing the name of the schedule of value in this box, but we can customize on the back end your template for these documents as well. So locate the invoice that I just created here so we can record a payment. See that it will show outstanding amount here for the total. And I did sync this to QuickBooks. So on the QuickBooks side, if I want to processing any payments there, Knowify is going to automatically pull them in and we'll update the balance accordingly. I also have a log and a record of this information so I can see, what actions have taken place, who was logged in and when, and I can also leave notes. So anybody else in the company coming in to look at this invoice knows exactly what was done, when it was done, and any relevant information here. So I'm going to go ahead and record a partial payment in Knowify. These also sync back and forth to QuickBooks. So you create the invoice in Knowify and the payments will go in both directions. Knowify will total at the top and give me some information about the total value of the job, whatever the outstanding amount is of the invoice. So this will be updated after I log a payment. And I could put in a memo here of how this payment was made and choose to send it to QuickBooks. Knowify will then automatically adjust the balance so I can see what the remaining amount is. and I get details about my payment here, and it lets me know that it did sync to QuickBooks. Now, also, this is useful here is I can always come back, and you see you do have the option to email this invoice to your customer at any point. So we can prepare an email here, and I can also generate a copy of this invoice document. But this is definitely a useful tool when the customer paid part of it and they need to know how much is left. I can just generate the same invoice from the same place in Knowify, and it's just going to continually update these amounts down here. So I can show them exactly what they paid so far and what the remaining balance is. And they make another partial payment. I don't have to go jump through hoops or anything. I can just come right back to this section. I can download this document, and this will update and show me what they still have to pay here. And we can also customize a paid stamp so that when it is fully paid off, you can generate this document and we'll have a paid stamp placed, in a location of your choice. So you can send that to them as a paid receipt as well. Back at the job level, Knowify will show me next to each line item exactly how much I've billed for, what the balance is. I can run reports on this information. I can see exactly what was billed. And the next time I create an invoice here, Knowify will break this down for me and show me exactly what I billed for previously and keep track of the total amount of the job. All right, so that's the main things that I wanted to cover in this session here. At this point, I'm going to open it up to the Q&A portion. I see we have some questions in there now, and we have some time here. So please feel free to submit any questions in the Q&A box, and we'll start going through them now. Are proposals numbered in Knowify or only invoices? Invoices are numbered automatically. You can always change it, but it'll just increment from the next one in sequence. Proposals in Knowify, they're not automatically numbered. However, you do have two different places where you can enter a number here. You have a PO number and a contract number. And similar to the job number, if you used a similar numbering sequence, we'll suggest the next one in sequence here. So you do have a place where you can enter a job number here, and we can actually display this on your contract and invoicing documents, but it's not numbered automatically unless you come in here and enter something, not like the invoices. How do we, next question is, how do we know if the invoice was sent to the customer? So within every invoice, and I mean really anything in Knowify, any page, you'll have an activity and logs feed. So here at the bottom of the invoice section here, I can see the activity. So I have some activity so far letting me know that, we made a draft, we finalized it, I put in a note here, and I recorded payment. And it also timestamps and lets me know the user that was logged in at the time. So now if I was to send this email out to the customer, and I'll just send it to myself here for an example. Knowify adds a activity feed entry here, letting me know that I was sent out, telling me who sent it out and when it was sent out. Additionally, in your main invoices section here, you get a little email icon here next to any invoice that you've already sent out to the customer. So I can see at a glance, looking at multiple invoices instead of having to open up each one, if each invoice was sent out to the customer or not. Next question here, when does the invoice disappear from the list after invoiced? I'm assuming it's the main invoices list you're referring to here. It never actually disappears, but once it's been fully paid off, it becomes part of the history here. So it'll no longer show up in your list of active invoices where we're specifically tracking ones that are currently outstanding, due within their range, or overdue. But once they're fully paid off, you would have to check off the show history box in order to see these invoices. But they never actually disappear entirely. You'll always be able to find them at the job level and by searching here in your invoices section. Question here, is there a provision for retainage on a schedule of values invoice? No, there is not for the schedule of values or standard invoice that we just walked through today. We will be having another webinar on our AIA invoicing, and that will cover the retainage aspect of it. So that's where you would, anytime you're dealing with any kind of retainage, you would use the AIA style contract in Knowify. It has a very similar workflow to what we walked through today, except it will produce an AIA invoice document along with the ability to calculate retention. But if you're not dealing with retention and still want to show the schedule of values in a similar way, that's where you would use this type of setup that we walked through today. I got a question here about on AIA billing, can description information be modified after the first invoice? We'll cover this again more in the AIA document, the AIA webinar, but it depends on which information you're referring to here. Once you create your schedule of values, this locks in the name. So, you know, each AIA invoice is showing what was previously billed on the last one. So you can't really change too much there since it has to remain consistent throughout. But you could always change the invoice number, or, you know, if you needed to update any kind of the GC contract number or date, things like that, you can. And like I said, we will go through this more on the AIA webinar. Next question is, PO number does not display on the invoice from the PO section, but only if you put in the header comment. Why is that? This is something that we would need to customize on your document, your invoice document. So you can enter the PO number here in the contract, but if you want to actually see that on the invoices for this job, just reach out to us at support and we'll customize your document. You just let us know where you want that PO number to display, and we'll be able to format it there for you. Otherwise, we recommend the header comment as a place to enter any kind of relevant information that you want to show about, you know, that invoice. So in these cases, you can come in here and Knowify will actually suggest some guides based on what page you're on. So you can see we're in the, you know, in a job right now. So it's suggesting the option of copying a project or changing the client for a job. But I can come in here and search for pretty much anything, like edit an invoice. Knowify returns results here, and I can click how to edit an invoice guide, and I can actually see this within my browser here. And find that information right here. I mean, that knowledge base it's not necessarily a manual book, but it's available to you in a number of different places. Okay, is there a way to display items but not the price? I'm assuming that is located here when we're, you know, creating our contract or adding a change order and when using that breakdown of materials. So maybe in these cases, you want to show these items here and the quantities, but you don't want to actually show the pricing here. You just want to show the total price either for the line or for the contract. But if you want to just show the item and maybe the quantity, this is something that we can customize for you on the template. So we can set it up so that we'll always hide the pricing columns here, and we'll only display the name and quantity if you want. Just note that this is a change on your template, so this would take the place for all projects. You know, this is only if you want this applied always. If it's something that's going to vary, we wouldn't change it on the template because, you know, there'd be no way to show it when you want to. So in cases where it's just kind of like a job specific change, typically recommend you'll be able to download a Word document of your contract, so you can, you know, download your Knowify proposal in Word, and that'll let you make any minor changes or adjustments that you need to make. But if you're interested in just having the prices removed and never shown up there at all, just reach out to our support team. We're happy to set up your template. Question here, are there proposal templates that we can load whenever we create a new proposal, assuming the job has similar line items to previous proposal and jobs? Good question here. So you have the option of setting up templates, but these are more for the plan and track section when you're building out your budget and your project plan here. So you can bring in a template here for the budget and then transfer that into the proposal. And that's one way to use a template to, you know, quickly create. But typically when you're referring to the proposal specifically and building the contract, I usually recommend copying the job. So I can actually come into the job that I want to replicate, and down here under next to my edit button, it has the option to copy a project. And I can come in here and change the name, put copy in front of it, but it's going to bring over all of the relevant information. Even though I've invoiced on the job and started tracking cost and payment, it doesn't bring in anything like that. All it's going to do is bring in, my line items, what I initially priced everything out to be, and then I can make any kind of adjustments that I need to for this project. So this way, if this job is similar in scope to that past job I was working on, I can just start working on it by copying and then make the changes I see fit to the pricing and what I want to show or hide to the customer. So that copy job is usually the best bet for the contracts. Let's see, the next question. If you send an invoice using the schedule of value style by applying a percentage or total amount to all line items, does it distribute them equally through all the line items? Will the customer see previous work completed on the next invoice? So with this one, it kind of makes it a little bit easier because once you choose the schedule of values invoice, you no longer have the choice between invoicing methods. It's letting you know that you're chose the schedule of values. So, you're locked in at that point to method number one. And just a reminder, method number one is invoicing, where you put a percentage against each line item. So up here where you would normally choose to change the invoice method, it's letting you know its schedule of value. So the only way to bill for these is to put a percentage against each line item. But yes, the customer will always be able to see the previously work completed on each invoice. Quick question here. I know this is fixed price. Have a question on the AIA. I do not show invoices on the invoices when I send AIA progress invoices. It only shows up in the email. Just reach out to our support team. We can customize the document. By default, it only shows the application for payment number in the top right, but that's a quick adjustment for our team. We can add the invoice number as well, so you can show both the invoice number and the application for payment number. Again, just reach out to our support. That would be a small change in your template. And let's see, we have last question here. What if you have a change order for time materials so you don't have a price for the line item? This is a good question and something we don't have a specific solution to yet. We are looking into something like this because, we definitely receive feedback. It is common. But, at this point in time, when the job is fixed price, the only way we can guarantee the proper calculations is that each change order also be fixed price. An alternative that I recommend is I can come in here and enter my change order and just save it as draft. So, and I can even leave the price at 0 for now since I don't know what it's going to be. I can now pop back into my plan and track section. And remember, this is where we create and estimate our cost on the job, labor and materials. I can come in here and I can add a job phase and I can choose to point it at that change order. And this is also a good option if you ever want to keep track of your cost for change orders separately. So we'll total everything for the job, but you can keep track of your labor and materials here specifically for this change order. So if I come in here and I create a job phase for the change order, I estimate labor and materials here. I might even start working on it. What this will do is this will, just like when we initially imported our phases as line items, this will give me a place where I can apply a markup based on what was estimated or completed for this change order. So now if I pop back into my contract section, I'm actually going to have the same options as before where my change order now has materials and labor that show up here with the ability for me to mark it up. So this is just an option where if you don't know what the price is yet, you can enter a budget or start tracking the cost, and you can point a job phase from your plan and track to a change order here. So this way I can now determine what I'm going to charge for this change order by marking up the price for materials and labor that I either estimated or costed on the other side. And this way I have the price here. You don't actually have to enter anything above 0 when you're creating the change order. I can always come back and enter this in later. And it looks like it's the end of our questions list and end of our time today. So I just want to thank everybody again for taking out the time to join us today. We really appreciate it. We hope that you'll join us for our other webinars this week and for the weeks to come. And if you need to reference this video or have any questions on anything we went over or didn't go over, please don't hesitate to reach out to us at support@knowify.com. We're always happy to help further. Thanks again, everyone, and have a great rest of your day.